First of all, I want to thank Nathaniel and Bruce for bringing me into the grandson of an event that I helped create going back to, when was it, 2004? 5, something like that? Which was the original BPM think tank that we put together at bpmi.org to try and work out what was happening in this space, because it was all going all over the place. There was the OMG, and in a way that led to the merger of the OMG and bpmi.org. Danny, were you there? You were there. So there's about 5 people in the room that were there, 4 people that were there, and in a way, Bruce sort of rescued this and created this event at what became Think Tank, just as I was going off to join Forrester and that sort of thing. So it's really good to come back, go full circle and come back to this event. But while we're on the history beat for a second, in 1992, I remember reading a report, and it was written by Ovum. I can't remember the name of the guy who was the analyst who was working there. He was around for some time. And he predicted that workflow, as it was at that point, was going to be a $2 billion market by 1996. And then in 1996, he wrote a report that said that workflow, or BPM, was going to be a $2 billion market by 2002. And then in 2003, there was another report that said BPM will be a $2 billion market by 2004. And then, there's various sort of predictions along the way, but you know what? It really just hasn't happened. And I found myself thinking about this presentation that I was going to do and thinking, well, aren't we in danger of sort of repeating the same sort of mistakes a little bit? And what are the mistakes? That was the question I was asking myself. This event, sorry, I was thinking it earlier on. So Clay's an ex-industry analyst, Jim's an ex-industry analyst. He and I both were at Forrester, Jim with Gartner. We've now joined MWD, another industry analyst. Do you know what the definition of an industry analyst is? I think Clay knows this one. It's an oxygen thief using too much of it. So I'm going to, I'm between you and drinks upstairs, so I'm going to try and sort of get on with it. But the reality, just sort of going back to where we are, right? We've always sold, and I say we, I'm talking about the community of vendors and the industries that, the people that engage. We've sold BPM as a sort of magic bullet, a silver bullet. It's just, you can snap your fingers and you're going to get massive improvements in productivity. RPA, the statistic, and this is a direct quote from the EVP of a major bank talking about RPA. And he went, and this was at a conference run by the FT about productivity. So there were no technology folks in the room at all. These were just business people. And he went, well, if we deploy RPA in a Western developed economy, it's an average cost of $100,000 a head for an FTE, one FTE. That same FTE, if we put them in an outsourced location, think India, Manila, or anywhere, it's an average of $35,000 a head. Along comes robotics, and for $15,000, I can get a worker who does 3 times the work of a human being because he's working 5 times faster and he works 24 hours a day. My cost of that single FTE now is down to about $1,500. So it's pretty interesting from the bank's point of view to work out what are the highly repetitive things that we can just take down to, right? Do the maths. It's really simple. So here's a bullet. But, the real problem is, back to the question, the way I asked Nathaniel, the communications, the vested interest. This is, my brother's department, and I'm the CEO, is going to get closed down and made redundant. And of course, I don't really want to do that. It's going to cause me problems at home. We've all come across scenarios like that, haven't we? I suppose the elephant in the room here is a little bit, why hasn't BPM, this magical bullet, do you believe in world peace? It's going to happen anytime in your lifetime? I don't think so. And yet we still carry on. It's the same sort of magical solution that we think we're going to come up with. So whose problem are you going to solve? Let me ask it a different way. You remember, now, Scott, you're going to have to stay quiet. Why is it, and yeah, I know that. I think Scott will soon understand why I say you're going to have to stay quiet. Why is it that IBM was prepared to pay $180 million for Lombardi to acquire it, and at the same time, pretty much the same sort of run race, Savion was sold for $49 million, fire sale? Why is it they were about $5 or $10 million in difference? You've got to stay quiet, you see. But the point is, can anyone tell me why that is? Go on.
Yeah, I used to work for Scott at the time.
But, sorry?
We looked sexier.
You were sexier. Do you know why? It's because of, and there was a really interesting paper that I got from IBM in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I downloaded it. It's actually sitting on their website about design thinking, and direct quote in there. It's one of the key reasons that they really wanted to acquire Lombardi was for the... Sorry?
It was written by Phil then.
It wasn't actually written by Phil, but it was... There was... I'll find it for you if you really want the paper. But it was about the user-centered design, the design thinking. It was about working with customers to help them solve problems. That was part of the DNA of that business that Scott was part of and you were part of. That was what they wanted to buy. And yet here you all are, excuse me, I'm going to genericize, and I know you don't all fit into this category, selling a bit of technology, right, that's like a silver bullet that doesn't need any real adoption. You know, it'll just work, won't it? Well, it just doesn't, does it? And I suppose what I'm going to try and talk through here is a way of thinking about this. Now, this is a presentation in a way that is designed for an end user audience, but I'm trying to do this in a sense of, you know, think about your end users, your customers' problem they're trying to solve. It's not technology. Technology can do anything you want it to do today, pretty much, within reason. If it doesn't work, get rid of it, get one that does. Would we all agree with that? In which case, it's all about the human adoption factor. It's all about the problems that Nathaniel's probably been charting a very difficult course through in the project that you've been doing. We have another end user in the room who's about to try and do something like this with digital transformation in a big insurance company. There is only one end user in the room. What I'm going to try and do is walk through a little bit of that sort of journey, and I suppose I'm well off into maybe one more thing before I move on. I want to pick up on what Clay said earlier on. If you think about it, Clay's point, Clay, to correct me if I'm wrong here, and I tried to end the comment, was that, you know, people really got a bit of a froth up almost. You know, what do you call it? The zombie froth. You know, they got a real passion for the change. They were involved, they were engaged. And do you know why? Primarily because for the first time in a long time, they'd been given a chance to think for themselves and help work it out. You know, it was a journey they went on. They learned something along the way rather than being told, this is what you will do and how you will do it. You will jump this high and we're going to have projects that look just like this. And I suppose the point I'm trying to make is, you know, we'll get a long way further if we bother to engage the people we're trying to help. So I put this title, right? Digital transformation does not equal process plus technology and stir. And of course, you know, there's all sorts of ways in which you could take that. But, you know, I put this together and I saw this tweet pop up, and it came from this, I hope he's not in the room, Michael, if you're here, I apologize. No. But he'd said digital strategy equals BPM plus collaboration plus ECM plus social plus, and I'm going, oh, really? You know, and then I saw and this was an Accenture quote about what digital transformation is. And I thought, I don't think that either. Sorry, I'm not having a go at Pega or Michael or anything like this. It's just this misconception that somehow or other people have that, it's the important bit at the bottom of the screen here, of course you can't see, your furniture will not transform your organization. You have to engage your people to do that. And that, I would posit, is actually the big problem with this industry, is that we keep on going out there trying to say, look, well, I've got the shiny new object, all you've got to do is adopt it without any other problems and you'll get these ROI type figures. And sure you can, but you have to engage the people. Now, so I'm wondering about, I found this a really interesting slide from Geoffrey Moore, actually, especially when you start talking about this transformation scenario. Are they sponsored by the CIO? Look, it's an infrastructure change. It's an infrastructure model. We need to redefine the price performance, the efficiency. This is about reducing the resources we need to deliver a given value. If you think about this at the CXO sponsored level, it's an operating model change. It's about redefining what we mean by productivity. And if you think about it as a business model change, it's sponsored by the CEO, and it's about what is this market all about we're in. Now, there's a few CEOs in the room for the technology companies, and I would put to them that most of the problem I'm trying to explain here is you need to start thinking about redefining the business you're in and how you're going to approach this. Whose problem are you solving? So I was having a go, I'm sorry, I'm looking about the blockchain conversation we were having. My point was, yeah, but whose problem are you going to solve? Oh, but it's not for us to package these sorts of things. And yeah, but if you solved a particular problem for a given industry, people would understand it suddenly. And the next industry beside it might take it up. I think, the same sort of thing goes for many of the technology vendors, that they think that actually by just changing the infrastructure model are really going to make a difference. And I'm not sure that that's true. I mean, I love this quote that I end up with here, that business transformation means being prepared to change just about everything you do, but most importantly, how you think. And really the point here is you have to start thinking about changing the way you think about change.
What's the attribution of that quote?
That's from the Chief Operating Officer from Barclays Wealth. And he was talking about transformation. And it was a throwaway comment, and the conference wasn't that much bigger than this one. And I just went, excuse me, I can't let that go. You just said something really profound. And I've taken it and sort of riffed on it a bit. But it really does mean changing how you think about engaging people, changing how you think about delivering value as an organization. Because if you're not doing that, you're shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. You're going to get Uberized. Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit. There's this traditional view of change, which is actually, and there's this sort of, the other side of the coin here is what I'm going to describe as the New World Order. Order. It's after midnight for me, okay? I'm normally in bed by now and have been asleep for 3 hours. Literally. So I think I'm doing pretty well to be standing up. On the one hand, we can think about exploitation. That's what the traditional approach is. If we can just reduce the resources that we need, we can push up the productivity, and it's real easy. On the other side of the coin, it's more about an exploration of the value that you're delivering. Just think, I don't know, Zipcar or something like that. It's changing the business model, it's changing the economics. On the one hand, it's do things right. On the other hand, it's do the right things in the context of the needs of the customer that you're trying to serve. Do the right thing for the customer. I could probably talk to this slide for the rest of the evening. I'm sorry, the important information is always at the bottom of the screen. On the left-hand side, you know, and think of it like this, and I'm trying to give you some phrases, right? The left-hand side, change is imposed on people. On the right-hand side, actually the change is emergent. One of the glib phrases I often use is that, you know, I try and help people work out how to get, you know, turkeys voting for Christmas or Thanksgiving in the US, right? How do you get people to want to change? Because once you can get them to want to change, it completely changes the way in which you think about managing an organization. So I'll give you a direct use case. The CIO of British Airways, CTO, CIO, Tony, he wanted me to stand at the front of the room and tell 50 of his business architects what good looked like. You know, as part of a workshop, because he was going to beat them up a bit. And, you know, if they didn't toe the line after 9 months, he was going to dissolve their jobs and make them all redundant. I said to Tony, tell me exactly what change in behavior you're expecting by standing at the front of the room and telling them all what to think. And he looked at me like, you insolent bastard. No one talks to me like that. I'll have you thrown out. But at the same time, he sort of caught himself. You know, the look said, you don't talk to me like that. But then he went, that's a very good point. Probably not much. And so we changed it. And actually, instead of telling them what business architecture good looked like, we got them to sit in round tables and tell us what business architecture good looked like and share their artifacts. And along the way, in a day and a half, they completely industrialized their approach and he got exactly the change of behavior he wanted. But he did it by not telling them what to think or how to do it, by engaging them. And in a way, that's the difference between what I describe over here as change imposed versus emergent change. But at the same time, it's, you know, you think about it, what you get on the left is band-aids. Just fix this function that's got this problem, we can just do that, and then I'll get a bigger bonus because I'm the CEO or the executive in charge of that business unit. On the right-hand side, it's more about a wellness program. Anybody here go to the gym? I know a few of us do, right? Whose job is it to keep you healthy? The government? Or is it yours? It's yours. And it's by swimming 3K a day that I buggered my shoulder up and now I can't do that. But I loved it. You know, I have to get my exercise regime in because it's my job to keep me healthy for my children, for my family, my daughter, whatever. My point here is every business, right, needs a bit of exploitation and a bit of exploration as well. It's not an either or, it's both and. You've got to be able to exploit what you already do, and you've also got to be able to think about how you explore what you should be doing. Okay, the real problem is this one. This is a maturity model, by the way, for those of you in the room who... On the left here is a CMMI level 2. Everybody, we tell you exactly what to do. You do it my way. In the middle is, you know, the processes, the cross-functional bits of connective tissue are there to make the functions look good. I'm giving you the sort of non-politically correct descriptions here. And on the right, on the right are the functions are there to make the outcomes look good. And it's all about power because up here, these guys are in control. They've spent the last 15 years of their life climbing the pile of money that is known as the corporation I work for. So I did a project for a large European bank, and at one point I remember sort of characterizing it like, you know, there's a steaming pile of money, like $1 trillion, and there's all these cockroaches and maggots all trying to step on each other to make sure they get further up the pile than other people. And yet by engaging those very same people and getting them to tell us what they wanted for their new function that was going to report to the CEO, that was going to challenge the hegemony of how they ran things, they described it was theirs. And all I was doing is writing it up. And in 3 months, we introduced this new function, business architecture function, reporting to the CEO, that was going to there specifically to challenge the corporate governance of how they ran their functions. Imagine how easy that would be in a large European bank with 30,000 employees. And in 3 months we did that. But that was because we got them to tell us rather than me telling them. Ce n'est pas un pipe. The painting by Magritte. This is not a pipe. This is not a cow. This is Henry Mintzberg, by the way, is the source. And really what he's getting at is the different bits of the cow aren't arguing with each other about how to run the cow. They don't think their job is for the front left leg to compete with the front right leg for who's going to have put the best foot forward. Right? They don't have trouble sharing information. Most organizations should be run a bit more like a cow rather than the political bun fight that is called management. Okay. So I came up with this framework. This is before, obviously, I started working for my new boss. Neil, sorry, I shouldn't refer to you like that. It's been very good. It's only... What was that?
I said, no, that's fine, you can do that.
I can do that. Sir. Well, I hope you don't take umbrage to my lack of respect for your colour scheme in the slide deck in a minute. But anyway, I tend to use colour quite a lot in this. And there's quite a lot going on in this slide. And I'm going to spend the rest of this session helping you understand this framework. And it is a framework for thinking about change and transformation. This is not about reducing the resources associated with doing work. This is not about trying to justify a bigger budget for your organizational change initiative that just changes the mechanisms for apportioning blame. Sorry, the org chart. Right? This is not about building a new application, and that's the start point. What I'm trying to get at here is there are three fundamental dimensions here. The first one I'm going to talk about across the bottom here, the bottom's always the important part with these, is actually about the organizational change, the cultural change down here on the left. If your organizational culture is and it doesn't want to actually examine why it failed at the last change initiative, you've got a problem. By engaging people and going through a co-creation exercise, or 3 or 5 or 10 or 100, or it doesn't matter, but by getting people to design their future, they get tied up in delivering that future. And you end up at a state down here of thinking about what really is the business we're in, what's the core capabilities that we have. Let me now talk to the left, the Y dimension. You need to start off by starting to really understand your customer's experience. I'll just run that again. You need to start off by understanding your customer's experience of dealing with your firm. How many BPM programs do we know that start there? Very few. It leads to, if you do that, along with this co-creation idea down here, a certain degree of service design, outside in, the design thinking piece, which can lead to business model reinvention in the sense of, if you do it right, your business people are starting to think, well, hold on, our model is wrong. We need to think about this. It's not 3 of us going off into a room and deciding that we've got a new model and we now have to impose it on everybody. It's how do we get, how did Hannibal get the army around to invade Rome? He had to, there are all sorts of things going on here, but he had to bring the army with him. And on the Z dimension back here is a sort of a technology piece, which starts off at sort of systems modernization, goes through a sort of process and decision management and automation concept that you can do to automate things, and ends up with, I think, Jim, your digital platform enablement, which is really, I agree that there is a need for that sort of thing. My point here is that you can't move too far on one of those dimensions without doing quite a lot of work in the other two. And it's actually the stuff across the bottom that's the hard part to do. You can, you know, if you think customer journey maps, it's a great idea, we should do customer journey maps. And do you know what that really means for most of the people I see doing customer journey mapping? It normally means, can we please draw a map of the customer's journey through our crap? Right? That's it. We've done a customer journey map. So, no, we won't. We'll leave names out. But there are some big technology firms, and they, you know, one of them based on the West Coast here, very big technology firm, and we were talking about their customer journey mapping, and I put it to them that actually what they were doing was mapping the customer's journey through their ability to interact with their systems. And I pointed out that's not really a customer journey map that you're doing. You're doing the customer's journey through your mess. And of course, only by getting people to start thinking about understanding the customer's journey and where the customer's at and what that experience really is, do they get anywhere. Now, I'm going to lay it out a little bit like this. How much time have I got? 15 minutes, Nathaniel? Have I got till 5 o'clock? Because everybody else was running so long and so late.
Yeah, cameraman.
Ush. I need more. Doesn't matter what you're trying to do, you have to get the executives to think it was their idea. That requires a certain degree of facilitation and engagement, but if they think it was their idea, then that's good. And normally they'll do whatever you want them to do as long as you ask them what their idea is, and then tell them. And you think about it, what's really happening here is you're going to sort of set the scope, the development program, whatever you're going to do. Now, chapter 1, I put it here, culture and learning. How do you get the organization at that level to start thinking about learning? We're going to move towards quite rapidly into the co-creation area. We're going to end up at this, what's the business model really all about? Similarly, it's understanding the customer experience before you can get to developing service propositions, before you get to start reinventing your business model. You can't go here and not bother to do any of that. It sort of makes sense when you think about it. And similarly, you know, systems, process automation, what have you. You know, if you think about all these big BPM programs or workflow systems that, you know, what was it? NatWest Bank in 1996 we're going to put 33,000 seats of workflow in, and but the big bugbear was all the legacy systems that they had to deal with. It never ever got off the ground, ever. Really even looked like it. They did a lot of work, spent a lot of money with consultants and what have you to make it look like it was going to get there, but they never got there because they didn't know how to think about modernizing their systems and actually enabling access to them. Okay, now I remember I started talking about colors before and I was going to barf all over them. It's because I use color here to represent different things. This blue color is chapter 1. This orange color is chapter 2. Notice I'm not calling them phases. The pusillanimous green is chapter 3. Sorry, Neil. So chapter 1 has got a bunch of things going off across those 3 dimensions. You're going to get copies of these slides, so I'm assuming, isn't that right? So you're going to get copies of these slides. I mean, in a way, it's, look, you've got to get a culture of learning, baseline the outcomes. You've got to form cross-functional teams. You've got to map the existing culture. You've got to start developing a certain degree of self-awareness going on inside the people inside that organization. Yes, you can get them thinking about the customer's current experience. What's the voice of the customer? Being able to stand in the shoes of. Understanding their needs and frustrations. You can read the rest of it. But you're really trying to get people to see the world a little differently here. It's almost like baselining where we are. But it does lead to some problems, because you are going to find yourself questioning some of the existing givens that you're given. Like, why are we organized like this? Why are the rewards set up such that you get this big fat bonus and everybody else gets, you have to be sort of courageous if you're an executive going down this path. Now, I'm also giving you a core here of the core of a workshop technique that you're going to use, or you could use, to engage your customers and help them understand their customers. And it's actually about, the way I have of explaining it is a bit like this. We know of design thinking, and we know of Lean Six Sigma. The problem is that they don't really talk to each other. One's a sort of outside-in view, and the other one's about how do I make my stuff, risk reduction, more efficient, what have you. If you like, the Lean Six Sigma is the left-hand side of that equation, generally speaking. And the right-hand side of the what I was showing you, exploration, are about that outside-in view. I mean, ask yourself this question. Do you care how your personal bank is organized, the functions, departments it's got? When they say you'll have to call so-and-so to get that done, you roll your eyeballs and go, yeah, fella, right, no, I've just gone through the ritual self-abuse known as identifying myself to you over the telephone, and now I have to do that again just in order for you to save some time. I don't care. But think of it like this. If you start with what's the context of the job to be done for this type of persona, this is sort of 101 design thinking for those in the room who know all about this stuff, and there are some of you, so and you can then think about what's that service consumer, what's their journey as part of that job to be done, as part of that context for that persona. Okay? That's not the same as the customer's journey through our crap. That's Joe and Sue are buying a house, they've just got married. What's part of their journey? Well, they're looking at houses, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're thinking about the curtains already. Yeah? But, what's the experience they might expect as a part of that journey for the bank giving them the loan? And then you could say, well, actually, we have this service proposition that delivers against that experience. And that experience is a set of configured business capabilities. Now, I'm going to start to be very precise here. By capabilities, I mean a decomposition of organizational purpose. That's not blah, 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 ability to do X, Y, or Z or any other. You could think about those elements of organizational purpose as implemented through processes, technology, resources, applications, and what have you. The point is, the bottom half here is that Lean Six sort of way of doing things. The top half is the how do you go to this point and then come back again? How do you actually design those great experiences? That making great interactions with customers is, by the way, what I think MAGIC stands for. But you have to engage your people this way round rather than playing around, shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic, changing the processor down there for things that don't really matter to customers. And which is what a lot of, I'm sorry to say, but workflow BPM type programs seem to be doing. So, I've still got 10 minutes, right? No, I'll go faster. I don't know. I could spend a lot of time on this. But, if you think about an engagement with an executive team, getting them to understand this and work it through in their head, getting them to even play the game. I mean, I've done this with the board of a major insurance company here in the US. They had a fantastic time doing it. And they then understood, and they worked out that their 3 competing change programs were just that, competing change programs. And it was playing out in the sense that, lots of money was being spent in fights that were going on in the boardroom, which they resolved by working through a simple exercise of putting themselves, working it outside in. They suddenly realized the aha. Well, of course, we knew that was the problem, but they had to work that out themselves. No clever dick arsehole consultant coming in and telling them that they should do that was going to work. They had to work that out. The CEO knew that that was the problem too. So did the CIO. But the head of marketing and the head of member management and the head of claims, they all thought that their own thing was going to be the thing that would save the organization. Of course, they needed to integrate these three, make it one. This also plays out when you get people to understand the problems they've got, but they also immediately start designing the future that they want. Because getting people to design the future they want, they'll get what they want. And you can do this. I've done this with a BPM vendor, all of its partners and selected customers, put them in a room with 10 tables, go back to Bruce, go back to Think Tank, the original one, 10 tables all interacting, going through this exercise, each one designing a service proposition, sharing artifacts at every point, at every stage here. They blew their minds really, really quickly. Okay. So the operating model innovation thing starts with this idea of engagement, co-creation. It's a group effort. It's a team sport. You've got to get people stealing each other's ideas, and it's being okay to do that. And you're actually doing service design outside in. Design that ideal experience. Don't try and fix the past. What's the point? Because when you design a great experience, your customers will love it. The people who help design it will love it because they created it. You can interrupt me at any point, by the way, and say, I think you're full of shit, or whatever. We are a few minutes away. But you can see, in a way now, this whole idea of model-driven processes and automatable decisions, systems of engagement, this outcome-focused analytics, they've got a home to play now, rather than just being something stuck out there on a limb on the right-hand side. And similarly, when you get to this, I'm caught up in something here, a wire. When you get to thinking about what really is your organization all about, what's the brand promise about, how are you going to enable things to become refined on an ongoing basis? Really what you're doing here, that CMMI model, I haven't included the slide, but I hope you can envisage this. Level 1 of CMMI is everybody has their own way of doing everything. It's a mess. Level 2, we have a certain degree of management control by geo normally, by geography, by function. We tell people how to do things. Level 3 is, this enterprise standardized way of doing things. And I think the real problem here is this standardized language. Because actually it's not so much standardized, but common. If you've got 5 competing business units all doing things differently, getting them to work out what's common about what they do, the 80-20 rule soon comes into it. Here's the core 80% that is the same. And getting them to industrialize that means that they then end up with a very scalable core to the business that you can then specialize for different segments and customers and groups. That's level 4. It's actually back down now. If you like, at the enterprise level here, this was the geo business unit level, level 2. You've gone up to the enterprise level, but now you're going back down at level 4 to specialize it by segment, by customer segment, because you know that this group of customers will value that innovation, that change to the way in which you do your scalable core, and feed all that back all the time, back into that scalable core. And by the way, level 5 is your people know that so well. They can do it on the fly for their customers in their sleep, in the full knowledge that they know that the enterprise can actually deliver on the promises that they're making to customers. Not in their sleep, but on the fly, in the middle of a meeting, whatever. So I suppose the point here is that you end up with a very adaptable operating model at the core of the way you do things. That you can industrialize that core. That it's actually getting people to industrialize what they do. They will then make it successful. But if you try and impose the change, you're facing the wrong way in the wind, as the English might say. You end up with wet trousers. Pissing in the wind. Anyway. Pixie dust just ain't what it used to be. How are you going to, think about your exec. How are you going to articulate that vision? What business really are you in? You're going to do the same old things and expect somehow by calling it transformation that it's going to get different results? That if we put digital in front of it, then everybody will jump up and it'll be digital. Because I've seen it on Facebook. There's no differentiation here. It's core to the strategy. It is the strategy. Okay. It's all about dealing with the politics. If you can't deal with the politics, you really are going nowhere. And it's the point I suppose I'm trying to make here is the soft issues are really the hard stuff. The technology, that's easy. Technology can do anything you want it to do within reason that you can imagine. The problem is getting people to want to change and engaged in that change so that it is successful. And the extent to which the vendors in this room can enable themselves to help their customers, right, be successful, read my lips, 180 million versus 50 million. I was using that as an exemplar, but think about, that's real. It wasn't because, IBM liked to pay over the odds for it. I don't think they did pay over the odds. Scott's going to tell me what I got wrong later on. I'm just, enough IBM discussion. Okay. Folks, I'm done. I'm around over the next 2 days. I'm really looking forward to working with Neil. There's one thing else I want to leave you with. I'm just starting a series of detailed evaluations of decision management-oriented products. I'm starting there rather than with RPA. When I say detailed assessments, my challenge is to try and work out what's really unique and special about this product and what they're doing. Why their customers are paying for it. And to be able to articulate that in an 8 or 10-page document that we'll publish to our customers. Okay, the business model is that the vendor will like it so much that they will want to reprint rights and all those sort of things, but it's not a pay-for-play. It's just that we are having conversations with some of you, and I just want to be clear and open and up front to the people in the room that we are working diligently and right now on this. I've got a whole set of dimensions and questions and difficult questionnaires and the whole thing. But if you really think that you've got a story to tell with decision management at the core of it, I'd certainly like to hear about it.